Last week we've discussed how to initialize and start working on a Remix application. And frankly, the knowledge you got from there is sufficient for creating great web applications. But as always, I like to go a step further, especially with tools I am using on a daily basis, and have my own starter. And if you want to skip the intro about remix stacks and remix templates, jump to this timestamp. Right, so Remix uses two kinds of starters, regular templates and stacks. The first are rather reserved for templates with minimum opinionated add-ons. The latter are quite the opposite. My here is a Slowcore stack. I am throwing a lot of my own thoughts, my own discoveries in here, along with my favorite patterns. If you're interested, let's go. So one thing, Remix convention is to name stacks using music genres. You can find blues stack, you can find indie stack with Sonic Youth on the header picture, you can find grunge stack with Nirvana, and these are authored by the Remix team, but there are plenty more by the community, just like this one. What is important to note that a lot of stacks are basically fully fledged full stack applications that have front-end and back-end joined together. So you might get database configuration, Docker file, deployment, all of those things that you would normally see with a typical backend and front-end application, like a monolithic one. This is not the case here. I am going more for backend for front-end approach. It utilizes the data that it gets, but the communication is through an web API. Like in the example, I am using REST, but you can use GraphQL if you want. This makes it a very lightweight and cheap in maintenance solution. You don't have to worry about hosting your database. You don't have to worry about setting Docker. You don't have to worry about anything because this is like a backend part, an API part. You or somebody from your team or somebody from, I don't know, different company, whoever can take care of this. And it also gives you more flexibility because let's say you don't want to use Postgres, you want to use Mongo, or you want to use Firebase, or you want to use Ghost CMS, whatever you would choose, this stack is ready for you. Right, so with this out of the way, let's jump to the terminal and initialize this new project using the Slowcore stack. Remix makes it super easy to create a new application. You already know that. But it also makes it super easy to create a application from a template. It supports GitHub out of the box. It also supports local directories. So I will be using pnpm today, but you can use yarn or npm or whatever else you would like. So pnpm dlx create remix at latest, and now we are passing the template parameter, and if we go with this some.dir, it will look for a some.dir directory, and if this is a compatible remix template, it will use it. If we go with username slash repo, it will by default go with GitHub. So let's initialize the Slowcore stack. So Tomek Buszewski, by the way, Tomek is short for Tomasz. If you are interested, Slowcore stack. Right, and that's that. It will now ask us where do we want this to be created. So let's say my Slowcore app. Right, it says it's using the template, and it has been copied. So I do not want this new repository. I want to install dependencies, and this is important. This template has a remix.init script. Do you want to run it? And I suggest you do, because it will configure your package.json. It will make all the files ready to go, basically. Otherwise, you have like empty variables in some places. So yes, and we wait. That was quite fast for a remix project. I think that's PNPM doing. Right, so I will jump to my IDE, open the project, and we see each other in a second. All right, so this thing opens with a README, and by default you have your name, so my Slowcore app, as it's called here, and it has some mandatory soundtracks if you would like to get to know slowcore as a genre more. Initially, I wanted to name this just by karate, like karate template. Then I thought that it might be a karate stack, and eventually I settled for the slowcore stack because there's also great albums by Duster. Galaxy 500 is perfect. This album on Fire is just, it's fire. So yeah, highly recommended to check this out and to listen to this music while you're developing this thing. But going further, this is just a regular description, so you can know how to install this, and you have the explanation of what comes baked in, if you will, and some explanation about linting, styling, environment, all these things that I will now go through in detail. First of all, we have a Prettier. This is my basic Prettier config. So it adds semicolons, it adds double quotes, and it adds trailing commas to everything. And tab width is 2 spaces, and it is a space, not a tab. Linting is with ESLint. Nothing really fancy here. It goes with types, and it highlights these files, and it takes globals, takes ts config. Sorry, it uses simple import. Simple import sort. So it basically sorts imports according to the groups, and the groups are in here. So right, so we have this. We obviously have TypeScript, and this is a default TypeScript configuration that comes with Remix. I've only added testing library globals with Vitest and put some of the shortcuts that this starter uses. We have also Storybook that can be obviously run from here, and it works like a regular Storybook. It doesn't have any extra packages. What else? We have tests. So we have 2 types of tests. First of all, you have like regular tests that are units or integration tests. You can test UIs, you can test obviously features, everything. I will dive into this test in a minute, but obviously you have tests. What else? We have end-to-end tests written with Playwright. So obviously this is the Playwright stuff. These tests are extremely simple. Basically the only test that means something is this, and I am testing here if API mocking is working. So API returns 10 elements, but mocks have 9 elements, right? So if await list item count to be of this means mocking is working. If not, it means that something is broken. And to be frank, this can happen. I am not really sure why, but sometimes the mocks just doesn't work. But after the latest fixes I've done, they seem to be pretty consistent, so that's that. And there's of course Playwright config with some desktop configuration, so it's like a bit larger screen, and it tests on 3 desktop browsers, so Chromium, so it is from Chrome for Arc for Edge. It takes on test on Firefox, which is obviously Firefox, Plop, and it takes on test on WebKit, which is Safari, Sigma OS, and any other WebKit-based browser that I don't know of. And it also runs 2 tests against mobile devices, so it uses Chrome on a Pixel 5 and Safari on iPhone 12. What's here is web server, so we are running the dev server with mocks, so we don't query any external APIs by mistake. We have base URL, which is this. This is the default port that Vite exposes. You can obviously change this if you would like. Yeah, basically that's it for Playwright. I'm also using Renovate. So this is a tool that makes sure that your package is up to date. So it basically creates pull requests in your GitHub, or probably GitHub as well, I don't know. But it creates pull requests that will just bump the versions according to what you have in here. So if you have strict version, it will say it won't touch it, but if you have like the carrot, it will just say, okay, here's a new minor version, so let's bump it up. There's a Tailwind. This is, I think, basic, almost basic config from Remix. I've added these 3 things. There's some error, require is forbidden. Okay. I might just update this to import sometime. But these are view transitions, these are animates and forms. Nothing fancy, you can remove these as you see fit. They are just, enhancing view transitions, so you can do this easier. It adds a bit of animations, and it styles forms. It's not like super huge styling, but it's more like a form reset. So nothing by default gets there. We also have Plop, obviously, so we can generate. Sorry, noise. Helicopter is flying over. Right, so we have Plop. You can generate UI. You can generate a feature, and you can generate a hook. So obviously UI is using the atomic design pattern, and if you saw my atomic design in React video, you're basically good to go. This is almost taken one-to-one from there. So it generates either atom, molecule, or organism, and it creates a component, a story, a test, and then it adds it to the indexing export. And with feature, very similar, asks for a feature name, and it creates a feature in the features directory, and it adds an import. And the hook, which basically creates a new hook, and it takes care of the name formatting, which is cool. So if you say use whatever you want, it will turn to use whatever you want. So I would say this is for the generator. One more thing is that this project has something that is called environment validation. I've always felt that this is something that is lacking, so I wrote a simple script that basically goes through your nth example and verifies the keys against your actual environment. So if your .env or your predefined variables in the environment are not like this. For example, you're lacking Vit mocks or you're lacking Vit API URL, it will throw an error. And in here, we have a short check. So basically, it imports verify env and it checks. So if env are available and if this is command on, so basically if you are running a dev server, so self and mode development, it also will generate you some types. Otherwise, it will just say error checking environment variables, and it will throw. This will also tell you what variables you are missing. So if we go now and pnpm run dev, you see it fails. Missing environment variables, bit public and secret that you will not see. So all that is here: Vit number, Vit API URL, and Vit mocked. So it is missing. You cannot go further. Obviously, you can just go this, do this, and you are good to go. It creates an env from this. So now if we restart, sorry, it runs and it says type definition and interface generated successfully, which is cool. And now if we go to config env, we have this defined. So if you see here, this is a string. This is empty, so it wasn't generated. This is a number. This is a string, and this is a boolean. So very cool. And of course, you can then go with I don't know. Sorry, there's a function get env, and it will suggest you what keys are available, and it will just say, yeah, okay, it's a boolean or it's a string. So that's also, I would say, pretty cool. Right. So that's for env validation. I am pretty happy with this thing. One problem is that this might not be perfect just yet. I am still working on this, but it should be like it works decent. Let's call it that way. I will not be lying to you. So that's that. So now the cream of the crop of this starter, because all those things are cool, but they are not that great. And we have in here a feature-based development starter environment, whatever. It uses a feature-based development strategy or architectural pattern. You can call it however you want. It doesn't make it less cool or more cool. It's just cool. Right. So when we again use the Plop file, the generator, it will create us a feature, and it will create a bare bones feature, but eventually you will probably grow this feature to have more files. So going from the top, there is an action async function, and if you remember from the last video, Remix uses actions to communicate with to transfer the user input to the server, right? So it responds to user actions, and it has action function args parameter argument basically, and it returns something that we typed, right? So form action response from types. And in here you can basically do whatever you want. So we are just taking things from the form. We are having an empty errors, and if the form data there is no setup, then we say that error setup. If there is a punchline, lack of punchline, we say that punchline is missing. And if errors basically is lengthy, if the keys length is more than 0, we are throwing the errors, and otherwise we are doing the transaction, so creating a joke, and we are just returning the message. Errors will be null, status as 401 because it is created, proposed, and the joke, right? You can have in here whatever you want. This is create joke. This function is literally nothing. It just takes the payload and returns it. That's it. But you can have whatever you want. You can have here, await API, create joke, whatever. You can have, I don't know, Prisma jokes create, yeah. You can have whatever you want in here as long as it can return something. And even if it doesn't return, like, we don't use this payload, right? It just makes a call and that's it. So that's for the action. We have a helpers file, and to be frank, this file is kind of an extra. It's a collection of small functions. So if you have something that you would like to, I don't know, like function capitalize joke, something small that you feel that creating a separate file is too much, you can have it in helpers. Obviously, you can create a new directory called helpers and keep every function separated in there. That's all up to you. What else? We have loader. So loader is kind of like action, but on the opposite end of the spectrum. So loader is responsible for fetching the data and giving it to the user. So in here, we are just fetching jokes and returning them. If you want, again, you can replace this with whatever you want. You can replace it with Prisma, I don't know, jokes, get all of whatever. You can replace this with pure SQL if you want. You can do whatever you want in here because this is a server file, like the action. User won't see this, so you shouldn't basically do anything unsafe in here, like, I don't know, MySQL connect and put user and password here. But if you would, it wouldn't be the best solution, but users wouldn't see it. Right, so we have a test, obviously, and this is a very simple test that just uses create remix stub, which we are using in a pretty simple way. So it is just a route configuration, so path and the component, and we are returning the mock data for jokes. So it just should render and should render the jokes component. Yeah, there's tons of feature React router flags because basically the team is approaching the release. I've watched the remix planning today, and they said that it should be out by Thanksgiving, and I have no idea when Thanksgiving is. Hold on. I am using my Thanksgiving 2024. 28th of November, so basically 2 weeks, roughly 2 weeks from now. And we also have the main file. So this is like the core, but please note that there are no loaders, no actions in here. This is just the view, and everything is handled by props. So this is literally just a dump component that takes some data and renders the result. Of course, you have like effect to reset the form. You're checking whether this has errors, whether this has posts, but everything is bound to analyzing the props. Right, so we have this and we have types. So basically types is again an extra file that you might want to use if your feature gets bigger, I like to keep types separate in a separate file just to avoid circular dependencies, because there can be a situation where you would have like type whatever in here, and then you helpers would require this type and jokes would require something from helpers. You would get circular dependency, you don't know what's happening, you're pulling the hair out. This basically mitigates that. And the export, so we are basically importing everything from as jokes feature, so it has it exports jokes as a component, it exports action and loader. So this is what we want to expose. And in here we are just importing that, and we are exporting jokes as action loader component. Right, so this is the basic of a feature. So let's see how to use this. So as you know, the core of Remix data transactions is route navigation. So we need to use this feature in a route. So how do we do this? Well, quite simple, to be frank. We have our jokes index file, so /jokes basically. And what we have in here is we are importing the feature, import jokes from feature, and now we have a loader and we have an action. So the functions that you would expect to have on a route that does some communication, and it just returns the loader from jokes. If we would have more features, so other feature in here, we would say jokes on the feature, exactly, await other features that not loader, and that would be basically it. So this is extremely simple. The same goes for action. You are just returning the jokes object which has the action. So it can have something, it can be a null, doesn't matter. What's important is that it will execute. So again, action, it accepts a action function arguments, and it does something, returns something, and we are just using it in here. And it has meta, so we're just returning the title, and in here we are utilizing the action and loader data. It is called jokes action data and jokes loader data, so it is prefixed with the jokes. If you would have more things in here, like we shown beforehand, like other features in here, you would probably just use action data, loader data. That's completely up to you. And the cream of the crop, so usage of the component itself. So jokes.component, and you are just providing action data and jokes. And that's it. So this is typed properly, right? This component is typed properly. So it has action data as this, and jokes as a collection of joke objects. And there you go. So let's run this and see how it handles. So what we can do is run dev. Okay, so server communication, and it is slow. You might have noticed that it is slow because API takes time to respond, right? If we go here, open the network tab, and refresh, you would see that the jokes took 300 milliseconds, which is quite a lot. Now it took over 1 second. So this is because the API with jokes is quite slow, and honestly I like to use it because of that, because it's very easy to verify whether mocking is working now. I don't have to count that there is a 10 items, because I already see that the API responds slow. So now what we can do is we can do def mocks, which will basically do the same, but it's instant. So we can refresh. And you know, this doesn't change, right? Of course, it loads MSW and stuff. But in here, you can see 15 milliseconds. So like 1,000 times faster than the API. So this is the gist of mocking. Obviously, this mocking also works on the end-to-end tests. And yeah, so basically, this is my remix starter. It also has pages with errors. If you want, you can browse through config if you want. You can change the templates if you want. You can basically do whatever you want with this. I encourage you to fork it and make it your own. This is, frankly, this is the core of remix stacks. A lot of things are taken from Indie Stack by Kent Dodds. A lot of things are taken from inspired by NX. So, you know, this is all open source. This is all available to you. So making it your own is like the best thing you can do with it. Or if you like it in the way it is, just use it. All right, so I invite you to join me next week, where I will dive deeper into error handling in a Remix application. So I will discuss API errors, React errors, internal, whatever, because Remix has a great error handling mechanisms, and I will show it to you next week. So for now, thank you and happy coding.